Well, I think if we look at what's transpired in the world over the last 18 months, there's an element which is missing from this forum, at least so far in the plenary and in the parts that I've been able to participate in and hear, and that is the strategic situation that Russia is facing today, and the fact that these are no ordinary sanctions because of a misunderstanding about a Malaysian aircraft shooting in Ukraine, or it's about Crimea, or it's about the Minsk agreements and so forth. There's a faction in the West, a ridiculous faction, but they happen to be the Western oligarchs, especially the American oligarchs, the Rockefellers, the Bushes, the Gates, and Soroses, and people like this. And they are losing it. They are losing world power massively in the past 4 to 5 years. Ironically, their own policies have caused the coalescence of Eurasian powers like China and Russia and Kazakhstan and others. And the war in Syria was instigated partly to weaken Russia in the Middle East, and China as well, the Arab Spring, all of that, and then the coup d'etat in Kiev, in Ukraine, in February of 2014, which Victoria Nuland from the State Department played a center role in, was designed to vilify and demonize Russia and Putin as kind of the new Adolf Hitler, if you want. They don't have very much imagination in Washington, so everyone is always the new Adolf Hitler. The strategic context of this forum, I think, touches on in different elements, and hopefully more and more explicitly in the next 2 days, the emerging architecture of a multipolar world, and one of the most beautiful and fascinating things. I think this needs to be made explicit so that Russian businessmen, people in and around the government, and so are very clear on a strategic vision for the future of Russia, because to my mind, the steps that have been taken since the crisis began, the firming up of the BRICS Bank and the BRICS relationships by President Putin and others in the government, the development of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank with China and 40-some other countries, the linking of the high-speed rail links of the new economic Silk Road project with the Eurasian Economic Union that was agreed during the May 9 events here in Moscow. All of these are the skeleton architecture of really a new world that in 5 to 10 to 15 years will become the magnet for the entire planet. The dollar system as a system is bankrupt, it's dead. With all due respects, we should bury that system. It's burying itself quite nicely, thank you. The Federal Reserve almost, since 2008, 6-7 years on in the crisis, has not been able to bring interest rates above zero yet. Why? Because the banking system is zombified. They're on artificial life support. The liberalization of the banks in Wall Street by the repeal of Glass-Steagall under Alan Greenspan and Larry Summers et al. In 1999 created a monstrosity that destroyed the United States economy through the asset securitization of real estate and other such things. And now they're so-called too big to fail, so the banks hold the Federal Reserve and the government of the United States hostage, and the economy.
So, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, with the United States' own economic problems that you just eloquently described, why would the EU and Eastern Asia want to enter into transatlantic and trans-Pacific partnerships with them? What's really going on here? Is this the United States' response to multipolarity?
Yes, and in one word, yes. It's a desperate move. Is being held in top secret. Members of the United States Congress, who by law should be able to read the legislation they're being asked to fast track, go into a sealed room under guard They read one chapter. They're not allowed to photograph or make copies or anything, and they're not allowed to speak with the press about what the content of that is. Now, how can that be something that you can have confidence in? It's a move by the ETH in Zurich made a fascinating study, one of the most brilliant I've seen, about the structure of the corporate world in the world, and they came to the interesting conclusion that 147 corporations, mega corporations or global corporations, dominate through stock ownership and cross holdings and boards of directors and so forth. They dominate the vast bulk of the wealth of the world, all the corporate wealth of the world. And that's a corporatocracy, if you want to call it that. Mussolini called it corporativism, and I think that's who's behind this TPP and the TIPP trade agreements. They want to make the rules such, the same as the WTO with agriculture and other things. Monsanto makes the rules for agriculture in the WTO, and Monsanto wants the right to plant their poison seeds in any country they step into. And the same thing with the TPP, that the adjudication of disputes over national health and safety laws would be done by the corporations in the land of their choosing, which would be the United States, where the courts are corrupt, such that countries can't defend their national interests. In Germany, where I live, the agriculture minister, Herr Schmidt, makes a speech and says, we are going to defend the higher health and safety standards of European food consumption for the consumers. He goes to Washington and he sells out everything in favor of the Monsanto agenda, or the agribusiness corporate agenda of the American agribusiness. And he tries to justify it, but he ends up just lying through his teeth. So it's blackmail, it's pressure of these mammoth corporations. In Germany, you have the chemical corporations, BASF and Bayer, who joined up with the American Chamber of Commerce to block a ban that was to have taken place in 2014 in the European Union of endocrine inhibitors. These are chemical compounds that create grotesque deformities in fetuses. They cause cancers, according to Harvard scientists that have examined this in great detail and support the ban. And on the basis of the precautionary principle, that was to have gone into effect until a delegation from Washington, from the American Chamber of Commerce, came to Brussels.
Twisting some arms. And later that same day, Catherine Day, who's the number 2 person, or just some think she's the number 1 person under Juncker, came out and said, stop this ban right away. So this is the kind of thing that goes on. I think there's corruption is probably too polite a word for the current state of Washington today. It's probably beyond what the Roman imperial morality was in the 4th century, before the complete collapse of Rome. Rome collapsed internally, and I fear that the United States is very close to a Rome kind of internal rot of the moral fiber. So we have to look clearly at the world. We have to look at what Russian national interest is, what European national interest is. Germany is massively losing economically on this. The VDMA, the Association of Machinery Manufacturers and Exporters, gave a report a few days ago with a catastrophic drop, more than 30% in exports to Russia. And that's a huge market for Germany. The companies that are no longer able to export machine tools to Russia, the Chinese companies are moving in and filling the vacuum. So these are shifts that aren't going to be transferred overnight with 6 months of sanctions. Partly it's designed by some people in Washington, some hotted up, ridiculous people around the Obama administration, and also some of the American oligarchs, as I call them, to drive a wedge between the European Union and Russia, and also the Eurasian Union and China, the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the BRICS, all of this, because what is congealing in a beautiful, coherent way
is as I said at the beginning, the architecture of a new, not just a multipolar world, but a world with respect for national borders, respect for national sovereignty, and interdependence without this slavish dependence on one world superpower that we have.
I wanted to go back to that just to wrap up our conversation and make it absolutely global in scope. Where do you see Latin America and Africa fitting into this? Because we have this Eurasian bloc, if you will, Eurasian interest or conversion between Russia and China, SCO. We have BRICS. At the same time, the U.S. is pushing out towards the EU, towards the Asia Pacific, and just makes you wonder, where can Africa and South America fit in this? Will they be a quote-unquote battleground between multipolarity and unipolarity? They
already, in effect, are. The attempts by the CIA to create color revolutions in Venezuela against Chavez, and now as well after his death, the color revolution against Rousseff in Brazil, one of the leading BRICS countries, because Rousseff, after she learned that the NSA was spying on her, her personal telephone, like with Angela Merkel, she said, okay, now we're going to build a fiber optic cable link between Brazil and Europe, and we're going to use Brazil-only equipment, no Cisco systems, no Intel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to make a national security priority of this and many other things. And then, of course, the BRICS banks. So Washington starts, Joe Biden goes down there, and a few days after he comes back with empty hands in terms of the Petrobras and the oil agreements, there starts a huge scandal on Petrobras, and already the trained activists in the Brazilian color revolution go in the streets and start picking. A couple of years ago, it was on subway fare increases, and that should have brought down the government before the elections. And now they're picking on corruption of the leading party of Rousseff and Lula. One thing after another. So they're trying on all flanks to counter this. And I think what's beautiful about the reaction of Russia to the coup d'etat in Ukraine is, rather than fixating only on Ukraine, Russia made an economic and political and military diplomacy global, to Latin America, to Africa to an extent, and Egypt, I'm thinking of, to Turkey, and most strategically, of course, to China. Such you have this ridiculous spectacle today of, and this just appeared in print in the New York Review of Books, an article by the American billionaire color revolutionist, the convicted speculator George Soros, and he was convicted in a French court and denied a reversal on appeal for insider trading some years ago. But that be not the main point. To indicate the level of fear in these American oligarchs, or these empire overseers, as they would call themselves, he's writing a major strategic piece saying that the United States must make a strategic alliance with China to prevent World War III. And what is the strategic alliance? To wean or woo China away from its emerging alliance with Russia. And that shows you the desperation after emails and correspondence was leaked a few weeks ago about Soros and his manipulation in Ukraine of the whole Kiev coup d'etat.